63. God of grace and God of glory. Let's turn to hymn number 79, Psalm 19, 1 through 9. It's at the tune of "Oh, for 1,000 tongues to sing." Play through.
All right, thank you, lady and gentleman. One lady and one gentleman. All right. We begin our messages by sharing with you a lot of the folks that write to us from around the country and around the world since we're on the internet 24 hours a day streaming, and we're on TV in about 200 different towns and cities. And these are folks that write. Many of them love the message. A few of them don't like it. They don't like predestination and Christmas is pagan. And got a letter here from Tobias Ender, no address. Hello, Jim Brown. Is it not better to also be water baptized just to make sure? We haven't missed it. No, I've got about 7 or 8 water baptisms, and I'll give them to anybody who wants them. I was dipped about, I don't remember, 7 or 8 times by my father and a couple other preachers, and you can have one of them if you want it. You can have all of them if you want them. No, that's like saying, that's like when Paul told the men at Mars Hill, I perceive in all things you're too superstitious. And the word superstitious, disi-daimonestheros, means you have a fear of the gods. Well, that's the way people are. Well, we have a fear of Billy Graham. He might be right, and Kenneth Copeland might be right, and you might be right. So let's hold on to all of you. We'll believe what all of you say. Well, you can't. And I don't believe it's good to hold on to water. We will get blood baptized anyway. What if also the symbol water baptism counts? Well, I don't believe it does. It was blotted out. Same mindset with keeping the Sabbath. Oh, goodness gracious. No, it's not. The Sabbath is every day. That's like saying, let's just change the Word of God. Isn't it better to keep Sabbath and the feast just to play it safe? That's like, no, that's not believing the truth. It's like saying, well, let me keep dating while I'm married to my wife, just in case I might want one of these other women more than her. Huh? No. What if God wants it that way? Well, He doesn't. He will ask us, why didn't you get water baptized and keep the Sabbaths? I'm sorry, but I can't keep from laughing at that. Then I answer, I thought I didn't have to do that anymore. Then maybe God says, you thought wrong. You should have done what you could, or something like that. Thanks for answering, Tobias Ender. No, I don't believe that. I think that's funny. We got an email from the Stovers. They're down in Phoenix City, Alabama. And this is Don and Glenn and their son, Mike. Hi, Jim. Very much enjoyed our conversation this afternoon. We always love hearing your insights. And one question that time didn't allow for today. A friend of mine has just recently listened to her first teaching of yours. She struggles with your teaching on demons. A lot of people do, understandably. But more specifically, she wondered if you had a teaching on Daniel 10, the angel who fought against the prince of Persia. In her words, she has always thought that demons, spirits, fallen angels were behind world governments. That's, in all probability, I've taught on that, and talking about Michael the archangel. And of course, fighting against the prince of Persia. The prince of Persia was evil. He wasn't good. So it couldn't be evil fighting against evil. Can you address this question or a point to a teaching I can pass along to her? Well, that's a lot, Stovers. It's not an easy answer. I'll call y'all and we'll talk about it, okay? Thanks very much, dear sweet brother. With love, the Stovers. Thank you, the Stovers. We love you guys. I hope you can come up to the picnic. And then Disa Jacobson watches us on TV in Anchorage, Alaska, and writes, Jim and Mary, howdy. That's what we used to have to say at Texas A&M. You had to say howdy to everybody you passed as a first-year student in the Corps. My legal name is Erica Leslie Jacobson. My nickname is Disa. I have a library of your excellent teachings. I never miss your program either. God bless you and keep you. Disa Jacobson, Anchorage, Alaska. P.S. The money I sent was a windfall. I'll be able to donate money each month unless another windfall comes in. As usual, use it as you see fit. Well, boy, there's a lot of use for it, a lot of bills, about $35,000 a month worth of them. Janet and Carson Elmore, they write from Oklahoma City. They communicate with us regular. Thank you. We just received the next set of Revelation series DVDs you sent. I just wanted you to know, in case you were tracking the time and postage, I appreciate all you do to get the truth out. Look forward to continuing the study after we finish the last current DVDs. Again, thank you and the rest of Grace and Truth Ministries who make the effort to get the truth of God's Word out. Janet and Carson Elmore, we love you guys. Keep writing. And they support the ministry. Hi, Jim. This is from Ricky Collins in Memphis. He's been watching regular on TV there. Hi, Jim, Miss Mary, Dave, Tom, and everyone at Grace and Truth. Hope that y'all are all doing okay. I received the DVDs and wanted to thank y'all. Please keep me on the list. Things are hard, and I'm striving to do as the Lord said. Get by day. You all take care. Agape Ricky Collins. Thank you, Ricky. And then got an email here from a comment, YouTube comment by Wolf Mother. I don't know what that means. I agree that the sons of God are indeed humans, as we are made in the image and likeness of God, and angels are not. And of course, the angels do not sleep with women, but we are not descended from Cain, as all of his descendants were wiped out in the flood. Well, all but Ham's wife. I go into that. He had to have married one of Cain's descending women, because that's where the virgin birth comes from, out of the ark. Eve, when she said in the 4th chapter in the 1st verse, I have gotten a man from the Lord, she's thinking back when the Lord said in Genesis 3:15, I'll put enmity between thee and the woman, between thy seed and her seed, and it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. And he tells the woman, in sorrow I will multiply thy conception, or your pregnancy. So when she has Cain, she says, I've gotten a man from the Lord. She didn't say I got him from Adam. She didn't know anything about a 9 months pregnancy, did she? No. Nobody had ever had a baby before. And so she thought it came from God. And I believe that, this is what I believe, that the lineage goes down and marries into the ark. It comes out of the ark, and Ham's grandson, Nimrod, deifies himself as the virgin-born son. Evidently, having come from that, that's where I believe the evil comes from, is Cain's descendants marrying into the ark through Ham. We are descended from Noah and his family, therefore we are all descended from the sons of God, going back to Adam. I don't believe that. I believe that, besides that, out of Shem came the Semitic race, or the Jews, and so forth. Hello, all at Grace and Truth. This is John Neurohr. Hi, John. Hope you continue in the well way. I thank God for everything. We had fellowship Saturday night. We looked up dispersion, scattered abroad, breaking pieces, etc. We only had time to look at 2 Hebrew words, putz and zera. I have to laugh when I hear people complain that Pastor Jim repeats himself. If you don't want to hear repetition, don't look at these words. We went through dozens of verses that talk about the scattering of God's people when they disobey him. From the garden to Babel to the diaspora, there are literally hundreds of verses that repeat the same theme over and over, and that's true. Again, when it comes to scattering, we will continue to study this topic, and maybe next week we will get into scorpizo and other Greek words on the subject. God willing, we will continue in the well way. Grace and peace to you all. John Neurohr, Staten Island. Thank you, John. We love you, brother. I got a bunch of letters. We get them from all over the world and all over America. How we ever ended up with this many people in TV stations, I don't know. Just one at a time, wasn't it, Dave? One at a time. And we're going on in, what is it, Boston? Maybe the Patriots will watch. Maybe Tom Brady will get saved.
Yes.
Tom Brady. Anyway, I was reading an article about that quarterback for the Seahawks, and he prays before and after every game. He's supposed to be a Christian. You know, some of them may be. Some of them may be young and be in a lot of confusion, but they very well may be. Linda Spring writes to us. I got to read this. This is a card from Linda. She's the lady that her trailer burnt down over in Arkansas in Hot Springs, and she's had a hard time. She's in her 60s, and we send her about $100 a month, maybe some cards along with it, and she didn't have any way to live. Had a little bitty trailer. It burnt down, and she's been trying to get back on her feet, and she sent us a little card, a little word of thanks. Shows a little bear giving a little bird some flowers, and it says, for a whole lot of nice. God bless you, Grace and Truth family, Linda Spring. I appreciated the Walgreen gift card. I picked up a few much needed items. That was very nice of you. Please know I also look forward to each set of DVDs. There is never a time that I don't learn something new. Thank you, Linda. We love you. I know you're having a hard time, and our heart really goes out to you. I really do have a heart for the needy. We were pretty needy people when I was young. Daddy was always pastoring some little Baptist church, and he never made enough. He would put most of the money made back into the church. He'd always drive some route truck or something, and we'd have 25 people. And I got a job. I worked and got paper route when I was 12, and I bought all my clothes and everything else since then. Never asked him for a nickel. Not a nickel for a Coke. If I had a Coke, I bought it. And I didn't think it's supposed to be any other way, and I'm thankful for that work ethic. I guess that's why I believe in working now. And got several letters. Got a letter from Marcy Mewsom. Let me read that from Marcy. They're our dear friends up in Columbus, Ohio. And it's just a little short letter.
I don't live in Columbus.
Huh?
I don't live in Columbus.
Where do they live? Oh, Lancaster. What am I thinking of? Yeah. This was about the Easter. Maybe I didn't read it. Dearest Grace and Truth family, we love you and miss you. We're looking forward to the picnic and seeing all of you, Lord willing. Well, here we are again, watching the world celebrate the spring goddess as they wonder why we don't. The world hates the truth. They love their parties, traditions, and sin. They hate sound instruction and have no desire to learn anything about God unless that God is wearing a Santa Claus hat while carrying an Easter basket filled with red, white, and blue eggs that have pumpkin filling. Thank the true God that we know the difference. May we be given the strength to stand against false doctrine as it pleases God to give us. You are in our thoughts and prayers. Grace, Agape, and Flail, Terry and Marcy, thank you. And I need to read this other one because Tony Wiggins wrote to us. He's the big, tall fella, 6'7", and they've had a lot of trouble, him and his family, and we'd like to reach out to them. Tony writes, hello, Grace and Truth family. Just wanted to say we love you and keep spreading the truth. God willing, we'll see you soon. Love, Tony and the family. Money order for tithes. Thank you, Tony. We love you, man. He's a gentle guy. I love Tony and his kids. I love his kids. He's got some tall kids. They're going to be like him. All right. That'll be all the reading. Let me put these over here. Remember our regular announcements. We've got regular announcements. We announce every time we meet. Well, there goes the book. All right. And we are on TV all over Nashville, a whole bunch. We also support our needy people. You say, Jim, why do we do that all the time? The Bible teaches us that. The Agape Love Feast was every Sunday when they met, and they took offerings for the needy. And we've got a bunch of needy people. That's really people like Linda Spring, that if I could buy her a trailer, I'd just buy her a trailer. If I had the money, I would rescue these people that are in a lot of trouble. And we got people like her and like Amanda Meadows. Amanda's husband is on dialysis 3 times a week, and they don't even have insurance. And the bills are collected higher and higher. And I suppose they just have to treat them. They can't turn them down. But, of course, they keep owing more and more money. And she's a dear, sweet lady, and we love her. We love you, Amanda. She needs our help. And so does Linda, and so does... And I got a whole list of them. So if you want to support these needy believers, send your check, make it to Grace and Truth, and put needy on it. We have a fund at the bank. It's called the BNF Fund, Benevolent Fund, and it's for them. And that's where offerings go. And when people need this, I send out cashier's checks to them. And we try to rescue people in a lot of dire situations. So send your check, make it to Grace and Truth, and put needy on the bottom of it. Remember our picnic that's coming up. And I've got several people coming in from out of town. And be sure and come and bring your whatever you're going to bring, your wieners or your banana pudding or whatever you want to bring.
Brownies.
Huh? And what?
Brownies.
Brownies, yeah, whatever. Those was named after me, I think. All right. Well, let's go to the Lord in prayer. And there's Dan back there with that new baby. That's the cutest little thing. Goodness sakes. That's just unbelievable. His name is Sam. I like that. And won't you pray for us, Dan? I love babies. They're like dogs. They don't fight you. They just sit there and be quiet, don't they? Well, sometimes they don't be quiet. That looks like a pretty quiet baby, isn't it? He is a precious little thing. We got several people out of town, Sheldon and Milton, and the Kravitzes are up in Gatlinburg having fun. So I called Sheldon. I said, I hope you're having fun. I gave him some suggestions. I like those great big movie screens that's the size of a mountain. Y'all seen those? Huh? IMAX. And when you're watching it, it's like, it's humongous. And you feel like they've got one where they're going down this river in the Grand Canyon. You feel like you're in a boat. It has to be a helicopter. Just, has anybody seen that? That's just, whew. Huh? Yeah. IMAX, yeah, I like that. I like the ones where you, in those chairs that are shaking and you feel like you're taking off across the sky in a roller coaster and you hit something, you go in. It's wild, wild stuff, isn't it? It's Sunday morning, and we're continuing our study on the 70 weeks of Daniel. I started hearing about the 70 weeks of Daniel in the early 50s when I was a little boy. I'd hear preachers talk about it and talk at it, and I learned after I studied it, after having studied it for over 50 years, that they didn't really know a lot about it. And I began to study it myself about 1964. And I've been studying all these years, 50 years or so, on this. And I'm trying to show you why it's so important. I mention it all the time to people. I mentioned some folks the other day. I mentioned it to a preacher's wife, and she wasn't even familiar with it. It is Daniel 9:24 through 27, and it is, according to Mr. I read it before, but Alva McLean's book on the 70 weeks. Now, I've got a lot of books on the 70 weeks, and I only recommend a couple of them, but I don't recommend everything they say. These guys are dispensationalists, and they believe in a millennium and a pre-trib rapture, but it doesn't keep them from being good scholarly men when it comes to chronology, because they are. When you read a book, don't believe everything you read in it. Exegete what's good and leave the rest behind. I don't believe in dispensationalism, and I could even talk to a man about it if he won't be so adamant and so emphatic, if he would let me exchange words with him. But Mr. McLean, I've got two books, one on the chronological aspects of the life of Christ, and the other one, the 70 Weeks of Daniel. This is by Harold Honer. He was a professor at Dallas Theological Seminary, one of the top postgraduate seminaries in America. And this one, I love his chapter on the 70 weeks. This is good also, but even though they're dispensationalists, which I'm not going to go into that right now. And we do have some of these up here, and we sell them to you just whatever they cost us. These are $14, and these are $8 right here. So for those of you that didn't get them, I've got some here, and I got some more left at home. But I like what Alvin McLean said. He said, probably no single prophetic utterance is more crucial in the fields of biblical interpretation, apologetics, and eschatology than the 70 weeks of Daniel. And he said, he goes on to say that the 70 weeks is the bridge between the Old and the New Testament, and it is. Well, what is this 70 weeks? That is a period of time that God has measured out for Israel's repentance. For repentance for what? Because while they were a nation, they under kings. Let me rephrase that. While they were a kingdom under kings, they were a kingdom under kings from 1 Samuel to 2 Chronicles. The 2 Chronicles. And God told Israel, if you're obedient to me, he gives, before they were under before they were under kings, they were ruled by judges in Israel. That was when they came out of the wilderness for 40 years, and for about 275 to 300 years they were under judges. Around 500 years, close to 510, according to the measurement of time in the Bible, they were under kings. And the Lord tells Moses, when he brings them out of 400 years in Egypt, and Moses leads them out. Of course, before Moses was the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. And when he brings them out, he says, if you go after any other gods, I'm going to take you back to this land that I gave to your father Abraham. I gave it to Abraham. You ended up in Egypt when your brothers, Joseph was sold in Egypt by his brothers, and then 400 years later they come back and go back to the promised land. He says, when you go back to the promised land, because I promised it to Abraham, he said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the land of Israel, and I'll be your God, I'll be your king, and you'll obey me. And as long as you obey, then you get crops, you can whip your enemy, It don't matter how big your enemy is. There in Deuteronomy 28, you'll go against them one way, they'll flee 7 ways. But you have to, but obedience is the key to God's covenant. Well, whenever we obey God, that's the key to our covenant with God also, because when we're disobedient to Him, He's going to rain judgment down upon our personal lives. Well, Israel kept going after all these gods. I can't name them all. I just put Baal and Grove and Shemash and Molech and Rimmon. Rimmon was the god of the Syrians. Syria was right up here. Molech was the god of Moab, which is northern Jordan. And Shemash was the god of, Molech was the god of Ammon, at the land of Ammon. Shemash was the god of lower Jordan, or it was called Moab back then. The Grove and Baal were the gods of the Phoenicians, or what we would call Lebanon. Back then they were called Tyre and Sidon, and the list goes on and on. They went after Egyptian gods, and the reason for this was because they said, we don't like God's idea of giving us a sabbatical year every 7 years. And every 7 years they couldn't plant, they couldn't reap. And I've gone over this before, but I have to reset this to let you know what the 70 weeks is about. And the 70 weeks is about these sabbatical years. They couldn't plant in those years, and they couldn't reap. In the 6th year, you got the 7th year coming up. Well, every year they'd have a spring crop and then have a crop they would plant in the fall. Well, the fall crop they would reap in the spring of the next year. But they'd be planting in that time period, and then they would always plant in the fall of every year, but they couldn't plant in the fall, and they couldn't reap this over here. Well, what about when it grew, when this crop here in the 6th year, in the fall of the 6th year, grew in the spring? Who got that crop? Everybody got it. The poor, the needy, the animals, they got to eat. So they didn't have a crop to plant in the fall of the 7th year, so they didn't have a crop to reap in the 8th year. So they're actually going 2 years without crops by the way they planted them. So they didn't have any crops for nearly a 2-year period. But I keep saying, that's what we call crop rotation. Good farmers know they can't plant crops every year. They plant certain crops one year and other crops the next year, and they let land lie fallow. And they know how to measure that out as farmers, and that's what these farm agents are for, to come out there and look at their land and see if they need. They'll test the soil, just like environmentalists will do when they're putting in a septic system. They'll test the soil and see what kind of nutrients it needs, if they pull too much out of the land. Well, they didn't have environmentalists back here in the old world, so they just had to let the land lie fallow every 7 years, and in that 7th year, the land would restore the nutrients. Well, they went 490 of these years while they were a nation. Now, I don't know when the 490 years was, and nobody else does either. What kings or what judges they were under. They had about an 800-year period. They were ruled by either judges or kings, but 490 of those years, or 70 sets of those sabbatical years, that's the 70 weeks of Daniel. And Israel went after these gods, and God says, the last thing I'll do, I'll get you out of the land. Of course, Israel was split into 2 nations. He said, I'll move you out by the beast. And the beast will take you over into Assyria, northern Israel, which is northern Babylon. The beast will take northern Israel into captivity. And then Assyria will be overthrown by Babylon in 605 BC, and Babylon will begin carrying southern Judah away into captivity, into Babylon. And Babylon is, I've said it 100 times, Babylon is what we call Iraq. Right there is Iraq. That is Babylon. Babylon was built on Euphrates, the city of Babylon, and the Euphrates empties into the Persian Gulf, where we had the Gulf War, and then you had the Tigris River comes and meets the Euphrates about 100 miles north of the Persian Gulf, and they empty together into this Persian Gulf. And Israel is carried off into Babylon on the Euphrates River, and they're carried off naked. They stripped them down naked, tied their hands behind their back, and marched them 650 or 700 miles over to Babylon. And after a few years, Israel was liberated over here. The people that were over here in Babylon, they were liberated and began to prosper and buy land and begin to more or less take over the land like they always did. They would always prosper. Well, God says, I have to get you out of the land. So he's issuing what's called the 70 weeks of Daniel. And that's in Daniel 9:24 through 27. And that's the 70 weeks, or 70 sets of these sabbatical years. And the reason they would go after these gods is because these gods, our God is the fertility God, saying you'll have crops and you'll have plenty of children, they'll be healthy. That's the true fertility God. But these fertility gods required no sabbatical years. You can just go after Baal and plant all you want. But the only problem is they're pulling the nutrients out of the ground and burning the land up. It don't matter. You can go after another god if you want to. You're still going to destroy the land. It matters not. That's God's ecological system, balance in his system. Now, we're talking about those 70 weeks. We're talking about Israel being scattered. I got to cover something here. We've talked about the places that Israel was scattered. Israel was scattered in 2nd Chronicles, southern Judah. Well, let me write it over here. Let me erase some of this.
Get a darker pen.
All right.
Move that podium.
All right. Let me see if I can get a darker one. All right. Now, northern Israel was scattered. Northern Israel. Northern Israel scattered in 2 Kings, the 17th chapter. Now, we went through that, and it tells you how that Israel was scattered because they went after all these other gods. That's northern Israel, the 10 northern tribes. The 10 tribes, which was headed up by Ephraim. Or actually Joseph. Ephraim was the second-born son of Joseph. So it's headed up by the tribe of Joseph through his son Ephraim, who was the head of the northern kingdom. And then southern Judah, which is southern Israel. Southern Judah was headed up by the tribe of Judah, but they named it after Judah, and it had Benjamin in that. So Benjamin and Judah comprise the southern kingdom. And the southern kingdom is shown to be scattered. This is in 586 BC. This is in 722 BC. That's 722 years before Christ is born. 586 years before Christ is born. And we're going to head towards Christ. Now, southern Judah is scattered, and we've already gone through 2nd Chronicles, the 36th chapter, and we've gone through the very end of that chapter, which shows us the first decree. Now, the 70 weeks of Daniel have to do with these decrees. It has to do with 4 decrees. And we're studying those decrees, and the decrees are given by Persian kings. And we know that Persia, the Persian Mede Empire overthrew Babylon. They carry Israel away in 586. And the Babylonians, that's 586, they carry Israel away, and then BC, and then they're overthrown in 539 by the Persian Mede Empire. Persian Mede. And the Persian Mede Empire is the only empire that gave decrees. The Persian Medes look like some of those kings might be believers. There's one king in Babylon that looks like he's a believer, and that's Nebuchadnezzar, the first one to carry northern Israel away. Excuse me. That wasn't Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was a Babylonian king, Nebuchadnezzar. But there's these kings that carried northern Israel away. I got a little off base there for a minute. These were people like Shalmaneser. And these were very evil kings. Shalmaneser and Sennacherib. And Tiglath-Pileser. Tiglath, what a name. Pileser. Or sometimes he is called Tilgath. Or Tilgath-Pilneser. Those are the two. If you see those two words in the Bible and reading the history of Israel, they're the same. Tiglath-Pileser or Tilgath-Pilneser. Same man. And then you had Nebuchadnezzar, we believe, possibly was a believer, because he's the one that said, all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing, that he doeth according to his will in the armies of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth, and none can stay his hand or say to him, what doest thou? That was after he was put on his all fours for 7 times over there in the 4th chapter of Daniel. And we believe possibly that Darius may have been a believer, or Cyrus. Of course, Cyrus and Darius were Persian kings. Cyrus and Darius. Because Cyrus gave the decree, said, the Lord hath instructed me to build him an house in Jerusalem. And Darius, he loved Daniel. Now, I don't see how. And Darius believed that Daniel's God would deliver him from the den of lions after Darius was tricked into putting him in there. He said, your God will deliver you, Daniel. And then Artaxerxes, we'll just call him Art, X-E-R-X-E-S. Artaxerxes he loved Nehemiah. And we're going to go through that. And Nehemiah was a wonderful prophet of God. He was anxious for Nehemiah to come back when he gave the decree to rebuild the city. He said, how long are you going to be gone? This is the decree that's the beginning of the 70 weeks that God's going to measure out to Israel for their repentance. Beginning. Now, I want to go back and give you, and I'll put some of these things on the board each week so we can kind of know where we are. But I want to give you the chapters, the other chapters where you're going to find this. You have to watch all these DVDs to get the whole picture. You have to watch last week's and the week before and so forth. And I started this 70 weeks about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think. Started to say years. I could teach on it 4 years. Now, the other places you find northern Israel carried away in one place, 2 Kings 17. You find southern Judah, you find the picture of Judah being carried away in 2 Chronicles 36, 2 Kings 25, and in Jeremiah, the 39th chapter. Now, I'm going to look at some of, we've already looked at on a previous DVD, previous message, 2 Chronicles 36. I want us to look at 2 Kings 25 to see this is the same time period, and we talked about in 2 Chronicles 36 that the prophets went to Israel, and Israel laughed at the prophets, made fun of them. They mocked them, the Bible says. And when they mocked the prophets, they crucified them and killed them. They sawed Isaiah in half. The tradition says that Isaiah was put into a log and cut in two. Now, that's very, very hard way to die. Now, go back to 2 Kings. What I'm trying to do is get you to understand the overall view of this. 1 Kings and 2 Kings are a view of the history of Israel from the view of the kings. 1st and 2nd Chronicles is sister books. The only way I know it, sometimes I express it this way. You got Matthew, Mark, Luke. These are called synoptic gospels. They have a synonymous view of all the events and miracles, and sometimes Matthew and Mark will have the same miracle or the same episode of Jesus, and Luke and Mark will have. Or Luke, you've got, for instance, you got in Luke 8 and in Mark 5 and Matthew 8, you've got the man of the Gadarenes. But you don't have the man of the Gadarenes in John. So these are synoptic because they got a lot of the same events, and they'll have different views of it. And you need to look, if you're reading about the man of the Gadarenes, don't settle for just Luke 8. Look in Luke 5 and you'll see there's two men there. There's only one man shown in Luke, Mark 5. Mark 5, you got two men, and in Luke 8, you got it showing one man. But it doesn't mean the other man wasn't there in Luke 8. It just means Jesus didn't talk to him. From not under Luke 8's account. He didn't talk to him under Luke's account, but it doesn't even mean he wasn't there. And I got more to say about that. It's like when they would say, "What have we to do with thee?" They may have been talking about me and this other guy that's got the demon in us or got self in us. Now let's look at this 25th chapter. This is where 2 Chronicles 36, 2 Kings 25, Jeremiah 39, Israel, the last of Israel, Judah, goes into captivity for 2,600 years. This is a very devastating happening to Israel. They don't become a nation until May 14, 1948, from this time period here. So when we read this, be thinking about that. Let's go to 2 Kings, the 25th chapter. This is Israel going into captivity. And notice, he's going to say some of the same things he says in Jeremiah 39, and the same things he says in 2 Chronicles 36. Now here in 25th chapter, 2 Kings, let me show you something that's not hard to understand. We're in the 25th chapter, the very end of Israel's history, right? Well, if you back up 3 chapters, you get back to the 22nd chapter, and Josiah begins to rule. Josiah has his great revival where he destroys all the idols in Israel and all the idolatry, literally annihilates it, and you're right down at the end of Israel's history. Here's Josiah, and then his son Jehoiachin begins to reign in his stead, and you'll find that in the 23rd chapter, at the end of the 23rd chapter, and then after he reigns, then Jehoiakim, K-I-M, he begins to reign, and these last few kings after Josiah. Josiah is the last real legitimate king of Israel. Let me put that on the board. Let me put it like this so you can see it. Josiah, he's the last true legitimate king of Israel because his son Jehoiachin, let me get this right. Jehoiachin reigns after him, and you'll find his fate at the end of the 23rd chapter, Jehoiaz, the son of Josiah, they took him and anointed him in verse 30. Jehoiaz was 23 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah, not the Jeremiah that's preaching, but another Jeremiah. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his fathers, not his father, but his fathers, that meant all the kings before him, had done. And Pharaoh Necho put him in bands at Riblah in the land of Hamath. Now, here's Pharaoh Necho from over here in Egypt, putting him in bands and charging him with a tribute when his allegiance belongs to Babylon, because Babylon is the empire, and Israel had made a league with Babylon. And the Lord is saying, don't go over to Egypt to Pharaoh Necho. You're going to be in trouble. That's not in my program. Then he says that he might not reign in Jerusalem, and put the land in tribute of 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. So Jerusalem is put under tribute to Pharaoh when their allegiance belongs to Babylon. It's no wonder that Nebuchadnezzar came in. Even though it was the plan of God, God programmed everything out to be the way it was. And Pharaoh Necho made Eliakim, the son of Josiah, king in the room of Josiah his father, and turned his name into Jehoiakim. So you got Jehoiakim. This is after Jehoiaz. And that's also a son. These are sons of Josiah. And Pharaoh Necho made Eliakim, the son of Josiah, king in the room of Josiah his father, and turned his name to Jehoiakim, and took Jehoiaz away, and he came to Egypt and died in Egypt. So he had made a league with Egypt, and that was his reward for making a league with Egypt. And Jehoiakim gave the silver and gold to Pharaoh. Well, see, he's going to follow along, and this is against the law of Nebuchadnezzar, and these guys are following after Pharaoh, and Pharaoh is not a world power at this time. Pharaoh's going to have to deal with Babylon. Babylon is the superpower. So everything they're doing is wrong going to Egypt. God's program is to go to Babylon. That's what he said in Jeremiah, the 29th chapter. Go to Babylon. Be friends in Babylon. When you get to Babylon, build houses, marry, have children, because you're going to be there for at least 70 years for the land to restore its nutrients. Then he says, and the gold to Pharaoh, but he taxed the land and gave the money according to the commandment of Pharaoh. So what they're making themselves, they're making themselves a vassal or a slave nation to Pharaoh when they're already under the rule of Babylon. So that's why the king of Babylon would come in and carry them away. That would be from his viewpoint. But from God's viewpoint, God orchestrated everything so it'd do it. Huh? Spitball. Okay. Mary's got a tongue, I got a spitball. This is my amen corner down here. He exacted the silver and gold of the... See, a lot of people's going to read this and not understand. What's the big deal about this? The big deal is they are under the rule of the king of Babylon. So Babylon begins their 3 deportations because of this. In 605, they have their first deportation because of what these guys are doing. They're showing allegiance to Egypt, and Egypt does. That's like showing. This is long after Egypt was a superpower. They're no longer a superpower. They're like a midget, and they're giving their allegiance to a midget instead of a giant. And they had agreements with Babylon, and the gold of the people of the land, and of everyone according to the taxation, give it unto Pharaoh Necho. And Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he began to reign. That's Jehoiakim. He's right here with an I-M. Notice his name ends with I-M because his brother is or his son is Jehoiachin with an N, I-N, and he's going to reign. And he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zebudah, the daughter of Pedaiah of Rumah. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, and according to all that his fathers had done. And then Jehoiakim became the servant of Nebuchadnezzar 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar. So why wouldn't Nebuchadnezzar come in? I've told y'all this before. They rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar and went to Egypt and looking for sustenance and looking for protection from somebody who couldn't protect them, not against Babylon. So he goes on down through here and he shows how that Jehoiachin becomes, we'll look down here in verse 5. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim with an I-M. Now remember, this is also brother to Jehoahaz, and they're both sons of Josiah. And all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? And Jehoiakim, K-I-M, died and slept with his fathers, and Jehoiachin, his son, reigned in his stead. So, now Jehoiachin is reigning. I need to show you this. Wait a minute. I'm putting a, that's a K, K-I-M. I believe it's C-H in the New Testament. So Jehoiachin with an I-N. He's the son of Jehoiachin, Kim with an N, M. And with an N, that's his son. So this is Josiah's grandson. He starts to reign. Now let's keep reading here. And he reigns in his father's stead, and the king of Egypt came not again any more out of his land, for the king of Babylon had taken from the river Egypt unto the river Euphrates. He better not come out and start trying to rule Israel, because Nebuchadnezzar has come from Babylon and taken everything from the great river of Egypt. He's ruling all the way to the Euphrates, and they have been playing footsie with the king of Egypt. You don't do that, especially when you got a superpower over here. But they were doing it. So can you see what motive that Nebuchadnezzar had to carry him away into captivity? He had every right, every reasoning was behind it. They were being unfaithful to their vassal king, their king as a vassal nation, as a slave nation, paying tribute, and they're running over to Egypt. That's why Jeremiah said, he kept saying to him in the 27th chapter of Jeremiah, don't go to Egypt. You go to Egypt, God will have you chased down and killed. His program is to take Israel over here into Babylon, make them sit there for 70 years, while the land lies fallow and the land enjoys its Sabbaths, so the nutrients can restore, so he can bring them back. But they don't come back. Can you see the story in the picture why Nebuchadnezzar is so furious with him? Let's read some of this. I didn't intend to go into this, but it's very interesting. So, the king of Egypt, verse 7, came not again, for the king of Babylon took over everything all the way over to the great river of Egypt and to the Euphrates and all that pertained to the king of Egypt. And Jehoiachin was 18 years old. Jehoiachin, I'm always pointing to these down here on the bottom of this chart, but I needed to write them on the board so you can see it. So Jehoiachin is reigning. Jehoiachin was 18 years old when he began to reign. And he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months, and his mother's name was Nehushta, the daughter of Elnathan of Jerusalem. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. Notice all these kings, which are sons and grandsons of Josiah, are doing evil. And Josiah was the last righteous king to rule in Israel. And then and according to all that his father had done. At that time, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, but notice his father. It doesn't say his fathers. It said his father. It said his fathers when we talked about Jehoiachin, meaning all these evil kings before him, but not Josiah, because Josiah was his father, and he was a righteous king. So he says that Jehoiachin did the wickedness of his father, singular, which was Jehoiakim. Right? You see that? All right. And at that time, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, came up against Jerusalem, and the city was besieged. And Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came against the city, and his servants did besiege it. Now, this is not the final siege. This is probably 597 BC. So he's coming in with a peaceful, he's coming in with his mighty armies, and they don't dare fight back. So this is the peaceful deportation probably of 597. They had one in 605, and the final one will be in 586. And that's when Nebuchadnezzar will come back again, and he will devastate Jerusalem, plow it under, burn it to the ground, and sow salt through it, the fields, so that nothing will grow there. And that's what's going to happen here. But this is a peaceful deportation here. And Jehoiachin the king, now by the way, before I forget it, a contraction for Jehoiachin is Jechonias. Jehoiachin. Now, a lot of people, and particularly the Worldwide Church of God, Herbert W. Armstrong, and the guy over there in Arkansas, Arnold Murray, they try to say that Zedekiah, who's the last king, they try to say that he took Zedekiah, that they try to say, well, Zedekiah, that Jeremiah was there when Zedekiah's eyes were punched out, and that and his last sons were killed, so Jeremiah took daughters over to England and established the throne of God on the queen's throne. Well, that's not true. The throne was never established through women. Never. The throne was always established through men. That's why you had a problem in the 38th chapter of Genesis when Tamar seduced Judah to keep the seed from dying after he had forbidden her having his surviving son, which was the Jewish custom. So she seduced Judah to keep the seed from dying. The same reason that it would be carried through a man. The same reason that when Athaliah killed all the seed royal of Israel, God retained one of them, Joash, so the seed would not die that comes out of Judah. She killed everybody that could inherit the throne of Judah except one. And that kept it going. This is the whole point of kings being carried on through sons, not through daughters. Well, the British Israelism says the kingdom was carried over here to England, and that the stone that the queen sits on was the stone in the wilderness. I don't know how in the world it could be the stone in the wilderness. I don't care if it's this big, because they needed water in the wilderness for 2.5 to 3 million people. It's going to take something bigger than that. It's going to take a river coming out of one of those rocks, because most of the water is going to go into the desert and be soaked up in the sand, isn't it? I don't believe it's that Moses spoke to the rock and the water went trickle, 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 and everybody stood back like they're waiting at a water fountain for my turn. No. It had to be rivers of waters coming out. I mean, can you imagine 2.5 million people lined up out in the desert? Hurry up. And we know this. Jechonias is a contraction for Jehoiachin. Zedekiah was the last king of Israel, but the promise of a king was not carried out through Zedekiah. He was carried into Babylon. But in this chapter right here that we're reading, Jehoiachin was carried into Babylon. When he went into Babylon in a peaceful deportation, I hope you can follow me on this. He goes into Babylon in a peaceful deportation, and in Jeremiah, the Bible says the king lifted him up out of his prison situation, set him at his table, and Jehoiachin had a place in Babylon, a place of honor. And when you read the first chapter of Matthew, look at that. First chapter of Matthew. This is like a puzzle. It's not. You just have to follow it through. And when he's talking about the lineage of David, which goes down through Judah in verse 3, and through Pharez, his son, Eshram, his son, in verse 3, Amram, Abinadab, Naasson, Solomon in verse 5, Boaz in verse 5 of Rahab, who begat Obed. Obed begat Jesse, the father of David, in verse 6. And then David begat Solomon. Solomon begat Jehoshaphat. Well, he begat Rehoboam. Rehoboam begat Abijah. Abijah begat Asa. Asa begat Jehoshaphat. That's this lineage right up here. Right here. And then he goes all the way down here, and he says, I'm going to connect this for you. And he says, Jehoshaphat begat Joram. Jehoram begat Uzziah. Uzziah begat Jotham. Jotham begat Achaz. Achaz begat Hezekiah. Hezekiah begat Manasseh. Ezekiah is Hezekiah. You see him right here? Hezekiah. Hezekiah begat Manasseh. And Manasseh begat Ammon. Right there. And Ammon begat Josiah. There's Josiah. And Josiah begat Jechonias. If you notice, they skipped Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim. And I've said this before. There's 3 sets of 14 generations here in this first chapter. And they skipped some names because they were evil men. And they jumped straight from Josiah to Jechonias, which is a contraction for Jehoiachin. And the king, and it takes you all the way down to Jesus. He was the king of Israel through Jechonias, not through Zedekiah. Don't matter where Zedekiah, where Jeremiah took daughters of Zedekiah. The king didn't come out of them. In England, the king comes out of Jehoiachin, works its way all the way down to Jesus. And he's the king, isn't he? And you'll find that in the first chapter. Let's go back and look at that and see Jechonias. Now, I'm getting a little detailed in this, and I guess it's okay. Sometimes I try to keep it simpler. I know it's pretty lengthy. Now, where was I? 12th verse, chapter 24 of 2 Kings. Now, we're in chapter 24. And Jehoiachin, the king of Judah, went out to the king of Babylon, and he is his mother and his servants and his princes and his officers. He is Jechonias, out of Matthew, the first chapter. And his officers, and the king of Babylon took him in the 8th year of his reign, and he carried out thence all the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king's house, and cut in pieces all the vessels of gold which Solomon, king of Israel, had made in the temple of the Lord, as the Lord had said. And he carried away all Jerusalem, all the princes, and all the mighty men of valor, even 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen, all the smiths who can make weapons for war. That's what he's doing. But he's going to leave the poor. And none remain save the poorest people of the land. Remember I told you, when Nebuchadnezzar's commanding general comes in, he tells Jeremiah, we heard that you've been honorable. We'll give you a place over in Babylon. Jeremiah said, no, I'll stay here with the poor in Israel. So Jeremiah stays in the land of Israel. Keep that in mind. Jeremiah never goes to Babylon. Even though he was invited to, we'll set you free. You'll be loose over there. You'll have houses and lands, and you'll be rich and wealthy. You've been honorable. Jeremiah tried to warn them about Nebuchadnezzar coming, and they were guilty for what they did against Nebuchadnezzar, for going into Egypt and making leagues with Egypt. And he carried all these away. Jehoiachin to Babylon, and the king's mother, and the king's wives, and his officers, and the mighty of the land, those carried he into captivity from Jerusalem to Babylon, and all the men of might, even 7,000, and craftsmen and smiths, and smiths 1,000. So what he's carrying away, most of the people in the land are poor. They're not craftsmen, they're not soldiers. All that was strong and apt for war, even them, the king of Babylon brought captive to Babylon. And the king of Babylon made Mattaniah his father's brother, king in his stead, and changed his name to Zedekiah. So this is, well, let me read that again. The king of Babylon made Mattaniah his father's brother. So Mattaniah would be the father of Mattaniah, would be Josiah, and made him his brother king in his place, and changed his name to Zedekiah, and this is the last king of Israel. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah, and he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that Jehoiakim had done. For through the anger of the Lord it came to pass in Jerusalem and Judah, until he had cast them out from his presence, that Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. This is the last rebellion, and God says, I'm not going to put up with that anymore. Let's see if there's something here I can give to you. All right. Now I want you to turn to the last chapter. I'm going to nail this down about Jehoiachin. Now remember, his brothers are his Jehoiakim and Jehoiaz end up in Egypt, right? But Jehoiachin ends up in Babylon. Now look, that's why Jeremiah kept saying, don't go to Egypt, because God's got a program for you to go to Babylon, and after you've been there 70 years, he's not taking you over there to destroy you. He's taking you over there so he can bring you back, and after the land enjoys its Sabbaths and it can grow crops again after you've destroyed it. God says, I'm not going to break my covenant. You may break it with me, but I won't break it with you. And look over here in the last chapter of Jeremiah. Last chapter. The last chapter of Jeremiah. And read verse 26. So Nebuzaradan, the captain of the host, or the commanding general of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, took them and brought them to the king of Babylon to Riblah. And the king of Babylon smote them and put them to death in Riblah in the land of Hamath. Thus Judah was carried away captive out of his own land. This is the people whom Nebuchadnezzar carried away captive in the 7th year, 3,000 Jews, 23. And in the 18th year of Nebuchadnezzar, he carried away captive from Jerusalem 832 persons. But there were more than this. There were millions carried away, because these are different captivities. And it's mentioning mainly the smiths, the blacksmiths, the workers in metal, the ones who were able to build weapons. In the 33 and 20th year of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, carried away captive of the Jews 745 persons. All the persons were 4,600. And it came to pass in the 37th year of the captivity, Jehoiachin, the one that was carried away, the son of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, in the 12th month, in the 25th day of the month, that evil Merodach, king of Babylon, who was one of the following kings, in the first year of his reign, lifted up the head of Jehoiachin, king of Judah, and brought him forth out of prison, and spake kindly unto him, and set his throne above the throne of the kings that were with him in Babylon. So Jehoiachin is given a place of honor in Babylon. Jechonias is a contraction. When we say a contraction, we think of cannot and C-A-N-T, can't, that's a contraction. It was short for Jehoiachin. And changed his prison garments, and he did continually eat bread before the king in all the days of his life. And for his diet, there was a continual diet given him of the king of Babylon, every day a portion until the day of his death, all the days of his life. Now let's go back to the 25th chapter. Perhaps I've introduced you why the king of Babylon had every right to come in and carry them away. From his viewpoint, because they were under, he says, I'll be your protector. He'd done that many years before. I will take care of you. Don't run off from me and go anywhere else. And Jehoahaz and Jehoiakim were running over here to Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Now let's read chapter 25. This is the destruction of Judah, the same thing you've got going on in the 36th chapter of 2nd Chronicles and the 39th chapter of Jeremiah. And it came to pass in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month, that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came, he and all of his armies, his host, against Jerusalem, and pitched against it, and they built forts against it round about. They besieged Jerusalem. Can you imagine little sleepy Jerusalem surrounded by the greatest army of the world, and they're looking out every day going, oh goodness, look at those soldiers and those spears and those weapons, and look at those catapults, and oh me, are we in for it? And the city was besieged unto the 11th year of King Zedekiah. And they start making a siege against it. And when they would do this, they would prolong the siege so that if an army was setting against you, this would be a sword. The sword was when they would make a siege against the city, and they would block every road going into the city, so you could get no supplies, no food. And after months, particularly after a month, and the people are starving, when they run out of food and they're starving, God says, I'll cause you to eat your children, in the 19th chapter of Jeremiah. And they eat their own babies. You'll find that over in the 6th chapter of 2 Kings, where the two women go to the king and they say, we ate my baby yesterday. Of course, the babies die because of lack of nutrition. And one said, we ate my baby yesterday, and she won't give us her baby to eat today. And that's when Jehoram says, I'll kill this Elisha for bringing this on. And it was Jehoram, it's you, not Elisha. You're going after these idol gods. You're a heathen. You're supposed to be the king of northern Israel. Well, that was the siege that they was bringing against Israel. Let's read about it. And the city was besieged unto the 11th year of King Zedekiah. Notice in verse 1, it came to pass in the 9th year of his reign, the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month, Nebuchadnezzar came and besieged them. And he goes all the way to the 11th year, they're just simply cutting them off. They could go in there and run over them. They just cut them off, camp outside, and let the people sit and tremble in fear for a couple of years. And on the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine prevailed in the city. They start eating their kids. Well, you want to see that? Look at Jeremiah 19. Jeremiah 19. I need to spend more time reading Old Testament. I stay in generalities, but in this series on the 70 weeks, I'm going to spend some time on this. Jeremiah 19. You say, I wouldn't eat my kids. Are you sure? Have you ever gone 6 weeks with no food? Till you're completely emaciated and you're starving to death. Those people in those camps in World War II, those Nazi death camps, they'd eat anything. They'd say, if it's food, I'm so hungry, I'll eat anything. And he says here in the 19th chapter of Jeremiah, he talks to Israel, and he tells them that the valley of Hinnom, where they're burning their children in the fire, there in verse 2 and 3, it's an evil place. I'm going to bring evil upon this place. Whoever hears it, their ears will tingle. And he says in verse 4, because they have forsaken me, have estranged this place, and have burned incense unto other gods, talking to Israel. Now Jeremiah is prophesying from 626 to 586. He's prophesying when Zedekiah is going to die there in not die, but his sons are going to die, and he's going to be carried away with his eyes punched out. Whom neither they nor their fathers have known, nor the kings of Judah, and have filled this place of Tophet, with the blood of innocents. Naki is the word. It means they're guiltless. They were killing their babies in the valley of Tophet, southeast of Jerusalem, where they burned incense and they offered their children as sacrifices, their firstborns, to Moloch. And they have built also the high places of Baal to burn their sons with fire for burnt offerings unto Baal, which I commanded not, nor spake it, neither came into my mind. Therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that this place shall no more be called Tophet, nor the valley of the son of Hinnom, but the valley of slaughter when I get through with it. And I will make void the counsel of Judah and Jerusalem in this place. Their counsel will have nothing to do with anything. I'll destroy them, and I will cause them to fall by the sword before their enemies and by the hands. This is talking about what's happening in the 25th chapter of 2 Kings. What Jeremiah is talking about and prophesying is 2 Kings, the 25th chapter, 2 Chronicles, the 36th chapter, and in his own book, Jeremiah, the 39th chapter. And by the hands of them that seek their lives, and their carcasses will I give to be meat for fowls of the heaven. You'll be dead, and there won't even be people burying you. Some vulture will come down and eat your body as an Israelite. And for the beasts of the earth, and I will make this city desolate and an hissing. Every one that passeth thereby shall be astonished and hiss, or make fun of, or laugh at, because all of the plagues thereof. And I will cause them to eat the flesh of their sons and the flesh of their daughters. I'm going to cause you to eat your children. And they shall eat every one the flesh of his friend, and the siege and straitness wherewith their enemies and they that seek their lives shall straiten them. When you're put in this strait, and you're going to be arguing over who gets what dead body to eat. Now let's go back to second. This, and what he's prophesying about, when God says, I'll cause you to eat your children. How does he do that? By bringing a siege against them like this. Now back to the 25th chapter of 2 Kings. Now, so he's talking about a siege, the famine prevailing in the city in verse 3. And there was no bread for the people of the land. And the city was broken up, and all the men of war fled by the night by the way of the gate between two walls, which is by the king's garden. Now the Chaldees were against all the city. Chaldeans were Babylonians. That's another term for Babylonians. The Chaldean mountains were over there. And the king went the way toward the plain. Zedekiah takes off, sneaks out of the city, and heads towards the plain. And the army of the Chaldeans pursued after the king, after King Zedekiah, king of Judah, and overtook him in the plains of Jericho. So he's headed. Zedekiah sneaks out of the city. If Jerusalem is here, Jericho is up here. So he's headed out to Jericho. Here's the Mediterranean Sea. Here's Israel. And he's headed, and he's trying to get away from the Babylonian soldiers. So he heads towards Jericho. And he heads to Jericho, and all the army was scattered from him, and they took King Nebuchadnezzar. They took King Zedekiah of southern Judah and brought him to the king of Babylon, to Riblah, and they gave judgment upon him, said, here's your judgment. And they slew the sons of Zedekiah before his very eyes. Said, take a last look at these boys, Zedekiah. This is the last you're going to see them. And they stood them right in front of him, slashed their heads off or ran them through with a sword or something. And Zedekiah watched his sons die right in front of him. And then, that's not the worst of it. And they put out the eyes of Zedekiah and bound him in fetters of brass and carried him about 650 miles away and made him walk all the way to Babylon. But the kingship didn't come through Zedekiah. It came through Jechonias, didn't it? Or Jehoiachin. And in the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which is the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came, and Nebuzaradan, captain of his guard, he was the head of his host, Nebuzaradan, a servant of the king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem. And then Nebuzaradan heads out through Jerusalem, wreaking terror on the place. And he burnt the house of the Lord. He burnt the temple, pulled the stones down. And the king's house. The king had a castle, a palace of his own. And all the houses of Jerusalem and every great man's house burnt he with fire. Every great man. He said, we'll get rid of all of the leaders in Jerusalem, all the Pharisees. Everybody's coming down. And all the army of the Chaldees that were with the captain of the guard brake down the walls of Jerusalem round about. Now the rest of the people that were left in the city, and the fugitives that fell away to the king of Babylon, with the remnant of the multitude, did Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, carry away. Now you're going to read about Nebuzaradan throughout Jeremiah's adventures when you get up into that 38, 39, 40 of Jeremiah. But the captain of the guard left the poor. Isn't that what it said over in the 23rd chapter? He left the poor. And Jeremiah, when he's given choice to go to Babylon, he says, I'll stay here with the poor. Left the poor of the land, and to be vine dressers and husbandmen, and the pillars of brass that were in the house of the Lord, and the bases and the brazen sea. This is more detailed than 2 Chronicles, the 36th chapter. That was in the house of the Lord, did the Chaldees break in pieces and carry the brass of them to Babylon, and the pots and shovels and snuffers. Snuffers would snuff out the candles. They had shovels for shoveling the coals that were on the altar, that were burning on the altar. They had all sorts of instruments. And the spoons and all the vessels of brass wherewith they ministered took they away, and the fire pans and the bowls and such things as were of gold, in gold and silver the captain of the guard took away. That was Nebuzaradan. When you see the captain of the guard, that is Nebuchadnezzar's commander. The 2 pillars one sea in the bases. There was a brazen sea. They took that. That was right in front of the temple. There was a brazen sea right here, right in front of the porch. And they carried that away. And the two pillars, one sea, the bases which Solomon had made for the house of the Lord, the brass of these vessels was without weight. The height of one pillar was 18 cubits. The chapiter upon it was brass. The height of the chapiter 3 cubits, and the wreath and work in pomegranates upon the chapiter round about, all of the brass. All of these things they're carrying away. Now, and well, let me go ahead and read. And the captain of the guard took Sarai, the chief priest, and Zephaniah, the second priest, and 3 keepers of the door, and out of the city he took an officer that was set over the men of war, and 5 men of them that were in the king's presence, which were found in the city, and the principal scribe of the hosts which mustered the people of the land, and 60 men of the people of the land that were found in the city. And Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, took these and brought them to the king of Babylon, to Riblah. And the king of Babylon smote them and slew them at Riblah in the land of Hamath. So Judah was carried away out of their land. They're gone. Now, how much time do I have, Mike?
27.
Let me go over here and show you that Jeremiah warns the people, don't go to Israel, go to Babylon. He said that in the 29th chapter of Jeremiah.
Egypt.
Don't go to Egypt, go to Babylon. Egypt is the wrong place. There's not going to be 70 years in Egypt. You go over there and you'll be slaves from now on. I got 70 years over here. I'm going to move upon these 3 kings to give these decrees. Cyrus will give the first decree in Ezra, the 1st chapter. Darius will give the 2nd decree in Ezra, the 6th chapter. Artaxerxes will give the 3rd decree. That'll be to bring supplies and priests back. And Ezra is over here in Babylon, and he's going to go over here to Israel, and he's going to meet, and him and Nehemiah are going to become friends over here. And well, I was giving you something. I forgot what I was giving you. Let's go over to Jeremiah, the 27th chapter. Now remember, Jeremiah is prophesying from around 626 BC to 586. That's when they're carried away. He prophesies and preaches to them for 40 years. That's 40 years. And tells them that judgment's going to come from Nebuchadnezzar, and they're going to be carried away because they kept going after Baal in the grove and Shemash and Molech, and they never kept their sabbatical years. And God's going to give them 70 years in Babylon for the 70 sets of sabbatical years. They got 70 sets, and the 7 years in a sabbatical week, these are weeks of years, and I'm going to go why that is. So he's going to give them 70 years over here, and if they don't repent, he's going to measure out 70 times 7, and that's the 70 weeks of Daniel. And he's saying, I have a program of 70 years in Babylon. I have no program for Egypt. You go over there, I'm just going to have you killed. Don't run for your life. Now let's go to the 27th chapter of Jeremiah. And remember, Jeremiah's walking through the streets of Jerusalem. In the 1st chapter of Jeremiah, the Lord says, don't be afraid of the faces of the men. Go to the gates of the city. Go to the gates of the temple. Preach to everybody and say, judgment's coming. Nebuchadnezzar's coming. And the Lord tells Jeremiah, do not pray for this people. I'm not delivering them. You are a preacher of judgment. I believe that's what I am. I don't believe you can preach the message I preach and get a large crowd. But you know something? God had to convince me to preach this. I didn't want to preach it. I wanted to go out and win everybody as friends and be a real friendly guy. When I was traveling as a young preacher, at 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, all over America. I wanted to get along with all these Baptist preachers, and I kept thinking, if I can only get along with them, become real good friends with them, then they'll let me preach predestination in their church. It don't work that way. You know, see, I'll be real friendly to my mother and my brothers and sisters, and then after a while, and I won't say nothing to them about predestination and Christmas till I gain their confidence. Well, you don't ever gain that confidence. If they have ears to hear, they hear, and if they don't, they won't. Isn't that true? That's right. And as a young preacher, God had to convince me by putting me in the hospital and nearly killing me. In the hospital, I surrendered to the Lord. I said, Lord, I'm just going to, I give up. I'm not going to fight you anymore. I lost all of my dreams of becoming a rich real estate mogul. I lost all my dreams of being a singer. God wiped out the dreams in my mind. I said, I'll just preach for you next service. All I think about when I get through this morning is preaching tonight. All I'll think about come Wednesday, after I preach tonight, is Wednesday. I don't have dreams of having some great congregation in church, because you can't have that. You're only going to have few. Now, where was I? 27th chapter of Jeremiah. And I'm going to read this because this is a very interesting chapter. He's wanting him to put the yoke of the king of Babylon on. He says the same words in the 29th chapter. Not the same words, but the same message. In the beginning of the reign of Jehoiachin, son of Josiah, remember he's the son of he's the brother of Jehoahaz. Jehoiakim is son of Josiah. Jehoahaz is son of Josiah. So in the beginning of Jehoiakim, son of Josiah, king of Judah, came this word unto Jeremiah from the Lord, saying. Now here's Jeremiah preaching to these men. Thus saith the Lord to me, make thee bonds and yokes, and put them upon thy neck, Jeremiah. What's he talking about? The yoke of a kingdom was the laws of a kingdom. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. A yoke of a kingdom, you can look that up in nearly any of these books. A yoke of the kingdom was the laws of a kingdom. He is, what's he doing here? Putting a yoke upon his neck. Somebody needs to tell me.
Be in submission.
No, he's acting out a contract, what Israel is going to have to do going to Babylon, and he's going to parade through the streets and say, put the yoke of the king of Babylon upon your neck, because you're going to be there 70 years, marry children. He says that in the 29th chapter. He says, marry, have kids, plant gardens. You got 70 years to live there at least. That's a long time. And send them to the king of Edom, and to the king of Moab, and to the king of the Ammonites, and to the king of Tyrus, and to the king of Zidon, because Babylon is controlling these nations. Babylon is a world system. By the hand of the messengers which came to Jerusalem unto Zedekiah king of Judah, and command them to say unto their masters, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, thus shall you say unto your masters, I made the earth, the man and the beast that are upon the ground, by my great power, by my outstretched arm, I have given it unto whom it seemed to me. Well, I think that's the same thing he said over there in Daniel, when he said God gives his kingdoms to the whomsoever he will, and he sets them over at the basis of men. He sets the kingdoms of the earth to whoever. We'll look at that in Daniel. Daniel 4. God is saying, if a man is a king, I made him king. If he's a preacher, I made him a preacher. If he's a pastor, I made him a pastor. If he's head of a government, I made him the head. If he's a president, if he's the head of a company, I'm the one that sets everyone in authority. And he says here in Daniel 4, Daniel 4, I'm getting a little more in depth in this teaching on the 70 weeks because I want you to see the whole picture. I apologize for not being more in depth along the way. Sometimes I think, well, it might be more than what they can handle, but I believe y'all smart enough to get a hold of this. He says there in verse 17 of chapter 4 of Daniel, let's read the whole thing. This matter is by the decree of the watchers and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and setteth over it the basest of men. The word basest, shafal, means the most low down. Men who are leading are the most low down. You mean Obama? Yeah. You mean George Bush? Yeah. You mean Bill Clinton? Yeah. You mean Ronald Reagan? Yeah. Jimmy Carter? Yeah. Do they compromise? Every one of them. I've never heard one of them talking about a daily crossing, death to self and self-denial. Have you? Ever heard one of them say, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily? I never heard one of them talking about agonizing over sin and going through the narrow way. Have you? And I'm not mad at them. I'm just saying I don't believe in any of the leaders of America. Don't care what color they are. Don't care what race they are, what religion they are. I don't believe in it. I don't believe in Ronald Reagan because he said he was a Christian. We had a guy here that was stationed in the White House, and he said they cussed all the time when they got in cars. And he said him and Reagan and all those important people, they'd be cussing. That's not Christianity. Jimmy Carter wasn't a Christian. Not by what I call a Christian. He didn't talk about death to self. Verse 6, chapter 27. Now I have given all these lands into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant. He said, Nebuchadnezzar is my servant. Why is that? Because he's carrying Israel away and getting them out of the land so the land can enjoy its Sabbaths and so they can grow crops when they come back. That's a work of God in Nebuchadnezzar. God is orchestrating this. And the beast of the field have I given him also to serve him, and all nations shall serve Nebuchadnezzar and his son, and his son's son, until the very time of his land come. And then many nations and great kings shall serve themselves of him. And it shall come to pass that the nation and kingdom that will not serve Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, if you don't serve him, that will not put their neck under the yoke of the king of Babylon, that nation will I punish, saith the Lord, with the sword, with the famine, with the pestilence, because Nebuchadnezzar will be the beast, won't he? There's the three judgments of God, and it's talking about, I'll take the beast and punish him with the first three judgments, sword, famine, pestilence, and then it'll be under the hands of the beast that this will come about. Until I have consumed them by his hand, by Nebuchadnezzar's hand. Therefore hearken not ye to your prophets, nor to your diviners, Israel. Don't listen to these prophets walking around in the streets like Hananiah saying, Nebuchadnezzar's going to come, but you're only going to be gone for 2 years. What a liar. Or you had another prophet came in Jeremiah the 43rd chapter, and he said the same thing. Therefore hearken not ye to your prophets, nor to your diviners, nor your dreamers, nor to your enchanters, nor to your sorcerers. He's talking to Israel. Which speak unto you, saying, Ye shall not serve the king of Babylon. Jeremiah is saying, don't you listen to them. For they prophesy a lie unto you, to remove you far from your land, that I should drive you out, and ye should perish. But the nations that bring their neck under the yoke of the king of Babylon, and serve him, those will I let remain still in their own land, saith the Lord, and they shall till it and dwell therein. That was the poor that were going to get to stay there because they were willing to bow. But the soldiers and the workers of metal and these artificers of made all of these weapons he carried away. I speak also to Zedekiah, king of Judah, according to all these words, saying, bring your necks under the yoke of the king of Babylon. Put this yoke on, Zedekiah, last king, and serve him and his people and live. The only way you're going to live, you have to bow to the king of Babylon. He's my servant. I want you over here in Babylon, so the land can enjoy its Sabbath. So after 70 years, I can bring you back and the land will grow crops again. But it can't with you just burning it up, crops every year. Why will you die, thou and thy people, by the sword and by the famine and by the pestilence? How many times have I said the first three judgments of God were the sword, the famine, and the pestilence? And we read that over and over. As the Lord has spoken against the nation that will not serve the king of Babylon, therefore hearken not unto the words of the prophets that speak unto you, saying, you'll not go and serve the king of Babylon, for they prophesy lying to you. They're going to call the preachers of God liars, which I've been called. For I have not sent them. Your own prophets, your own priests that are there in Israel, and they're of one of the 12 tribes, I didn't send them. I sent you, Jeremiah, for I have not sent them, saith the Lord, yet they prophesied a lie in my name. Jeremiah says that over and over. He says it all through the 23rd chapter, that I might drive you out, that you might perish, ye and the prophets that prophesy unto you. Also I speak to the priests and to all the people, saying, thus saith the Lord, hearken not unto the words of your prophets that prophesy unto you, saying, behold, the vessels of the Lord's house shall now shortly be brought again from Babylon. Don't you believe that? They're going to be brought back at the end of the 70 years. For they prophesy lying to you. Hearken not unto them, serve the king of Babylon, live. Wherefore should this city be laid waste? But if they be prophets, and if the word of the Lord be with them, let them now make intercession to the Lord of hosts. If these guys are prophets that say they're not going to suffer at the hands of the king of Babylon, let them start praying to God, make intercession, that the vessels which are left in the house of the Lord and in the house of the king of Judah and at Babylon go not out to Babylon. See if they can stop this from happening. Tell them to make intercession to God and say, Lord, don't let these vessels go out. All of the vessels of the house of the Lord, the Ark of the Covenant, all the priests and everything, Lord, don't let it go. Ask these prophets to prophesy that, because God's got it set. For thus saith the Lord of hosts, concerning the pillars, concerning the sea, and concerning the bases, concerning the residue of the vessels that remain in this city, which Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, took not when he carried away captive Jechoniah, the son of Jehoiachin. There's Jechoniah, and Jechoniah was Jehoiachin, wasn't he? Jehoiachin, and the kingship goes down through him, not Zedekiah. I don't know how British Israelism came up with Zedekiah Zedekiah's daughters getting the kingship and moving it to England. It went through Jechonias, or Jehoiachin, and the son of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, and Jerusalem to Babylon, and all the nobles of Judah and Jerusalem. Yea, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, concerning the vessels that remain in the house of the Lord and the house of the king of Judah and Jerusalem. They shall be carried to Babylon, and there they shall be until the day that I visit them, saith the Lord. Then will I bring them up and restore them back to this place. And you'll find that in Jeremiah 30, Jeremiah 42:12. Now, you get over to chapter 28, you've got a false teacher named Hananiah saying, well, Israel's only going to be over there 2 years, and God says to Jeremiah, you tell that Hananiah that I'm going to kill him before the year's up, and he does. And God kills him for lying false prophets. The greatest people say, The worst thing is homosexuality and abortion. No, no, no. The worst thing you can be is a false teacher. God will kill you for that. And he killed Hananiah, and he also killed over here in Jeremiah the 43rd chapter, you got another false teacher. The 43rd chapter, you got Azariah. Now, Azariah was a common name. There's other Azariahs in the Bible. Then spake Azariah in verse 2 in chapter 43, the son of Hoshaiah, and Johanan, the son of Kareah, and the proud men sang unto Jeremiah, Jeremiah, you speak falsely. There's one guy I don't want to tell him he's speaking falsely. That's Jeremiah. Don't ever tell the preacher of God he's speaking falsely if he's telling the truth. You speak falsely. The Lord our God hath not sent thee to say, go not into Egypt to sojourn there. Ooh. He said, don't you tell us not to go into Egypt, this Azariah. God says, I'm not going to put up with him either. Now, I just wanted to introduce you to him. I could read on down through this. How much time do I have, Mike? 8 minutes. Let me read down through this. I'm going to have to go through. I want to go through Jeremiah, the 39th chapter. This is where Nebuzaradan comes in. And what we're doing, we're showing you the destruction of southern Judah, which is the last kingdom of Israel. We're showing you how they're destroyed. The warnings that God gave them, don't go down into Egypt, and they did. And you got these false prophets rising up, say, you're not going to go to Babylon. We can go to Egypt if we want to. No, you can't. Now, where was I going? Let's read some more of this. But Baruch, let me see here. Thou speakest falsely. The Lord our God hath not sent thee to say, go not down into Egypt and sojourn there. But Baruch, the son of Neriah, setteth thee on against us. Now, Baruch was a friend of Jeremiah. He was like a stenographer for Jeremiah. He wrote Jeremiah's words down. Jeremiah had two friends that we know of, Baruch and an Ethiopian eunuch named Ebed-melech. Ebed-melech was always rescuing Jeremiah. He was willing to go to bat for him, and so was Baruch. So Baruch is correcting him. Baruch, the son of Neriah, setteth thee on against us for to deliver us into the hand of the Chaldeans, that they may put us to death and carry us away captive into Babylon. So they're telling lies about Baruch, saying he just wants them to carry us away. Baruch is Jeremiah's friend. He wants them to carry us away so they can kill us. Well, they didn't have to have Baruch, or didn't have to have anybody to set them up for Nebuchadnezzar. They're like sitting ducks. Nebuchadnezzar comes over there with this humongous army. God doesn't need Baruch to set them up. So Johanan, the son of Kareah, and the captains of the forces and all the people obeyed not the voice of the Lord to dwell in the land of Judah. And Johanan, the son of Kareah, and all the captains of the forces took all the remnant of Judah that were returned from all the nations whither they had been driven to dwell in the land of Judah, even men, women, and children, and kings' daughters, and every person that Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, had left with Gedaliah. Now Gedaliah was the son of Ahikam, and he was put in charge and made governor by Nebuchadnezzar. He was an Israelite, and he was made governor. See, Nebuchadnezzar needs a peaceful man to be governor over here, because he's coming over here to conquer him, then he's going to go back home. So Gedaliah is going to be the governor, but he doesn't last very long. There's too much jealousy, and they rise up and kill Gedaliah at a point. The son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, and Jeremiah the prophet, and Baruch, the son of Neriah. So they came into the land of Egypt, but they obeyed not the voice of the Lord. Thus came they even to Tahpanhes. Then came the word of the Lord unto Jeremiah in Tahpanhes, saying, Take great stones in thine hand, and hide them in the clay, and the brick kiln which is at the entry of Pharaoh's house in Tahpanhes, in the sight of the king of Judah, and say unto them, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, behold, I will send and take Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant. Notice he keeps calling him my servant. And will set his throne upon the stones that I have hid, and he shall spread his royal pavilion over them. And when he cometh, he shall smite the land of Egypt, and deliver such as are of death to death, and such as are for the captivity to captivity, and such as for the sword to the sword. And I will kindle a fire in the house of the gods of Egypt, and he shall burn them and carry them away captive. And he shall array himself with the land of Egypt as a shepherd putteth on his garment, and he shall go forth from thence into peace. And he will break also the images of Beth-shemesh, or the house of Shemesh, or the house of Sun, that is, the land in the land of Egypt, and the houses of the gods of the Egyptians shall be burned with fire. So don't go to Egypt. If you do, you're in trouble. God has a program for Israel. We said it out of the 89th Psalm the last 2 weeks. God says, though you break my covenant, I will not break my covenant with you. I promised you you'd be my people. I'm going to pick you up out of the land. I'm going to use Nebuchadnezzar as a servant of mine to pick you up and put you over here in prison in Babylon. Israel had no prison sentences. When God wanted him in prison, he'd cause their enemies to come up and put them over in jail over in Babylon, or wherever he wanted them put in bonds. That was their jail. Now, I don't have any time to go into it, but I want to go into, if you back up to the 39th chapter, you're going to see I'll just give you a rundown real quick. In the 38th chapter, the princes of Israel come to Zedekiah, and I'll just read this verse 4 of chapter 38. Therefore the princes said unto the king, we beseech thee, King Zedekiah, let us put this man Jeremiah to death. For thus he wiggled at the hands of the men of war. He's running through the streets telling us Nebuchadnezzar's going to come, and we don't like that. He's making us all disheartened, and we get weary and weak, and we feel like we're losing. We are. Wicked at the hands of the men of war that remain in the city, and the hands of all the people, in speaking such words unto them, for this man seeketh not the welfare of this people, but the hurt. And the princes are saying, Jeremiah wants to hurt the people, and Jeremiah is trying to rescue the people. You'd think they'd get it, and then they hear the rumblings. They hear the rumblings of Nebuchadnezzar coming in chapter 39. Chapter 39 and 40 is going to be a repeat in more detail of chapter 36 of 2nd Chronicles and chapter 25 of 2nd Kings. And when you get into, I'm going to come back. Am I out of time? I'm going to come back next week, and I want us to cover this 39th and 40th chapter. This gets into the chapters where Nebuchadnezzar is offered his freedom in Babylon. And this is where he refuses to go to Babylon. He says, I will stay here with the poor. I hope I've shown you this morning, the poor stay over here in Israel. Jeremiah stays with them. Jeremiah never goes to Babylon. You've got Haggai and Zechariah over here telling the people to get busy rebuilding the temple when they quit. You've got Daniel and Ezekiel and the 3 Hebrew children over here in Babylon. And Daniel and the 3 Hebrew children are doing miracles in front of, and Ezekiel are prophesying in front of the king of Babylon and in front of the Persian kings. Keep all these guys separate. You got Ezra over here and Nehemiah over here in Babylon, and they come back over here. Ezra comes back in the 7th chapter of Ezra to bring supplies for the temple and for the priest and all. Nehemiah comes back over here. He's a cupbearer in the court of Artaxerxes. A cupbearer was one who bore the cup, and if the king thought he was going to be poisoned, he'd have the cupbearer drink it first, and if he felt dead, he wouldn't drink it. That was also called a butler. And usually the cupbearers were eunuchs, so they couldn't rise up against the king. So in all probability, Nehemiah was a eunuch, and when he was trying to be seduced into coming into the temple, it was against the law of God for a eunuch to come into the temple. So Nehemiah is given the decree to rebuild the city, and that's the beginning of the 70 weeks of Daniel, 70 weeks in Nehemiah, the 2nd chapter, where Artaxerxes signs a decree, and Nehemiah comes back over here to Israel to rebuild the city, and he's over there 12 years before he goes home. I hope it's not too many things. It's a lot of Israel's history. I want you to see it. Well, let's pray. Father, we thank you for your word and for truth. Lord, help me to lay this out so people can see this. This is what prophecy's about. It's this 70 weeks, but we have to see how we move into it. And I pray you'll give us strength to grasp these things. I pray for the flock that they can see this so they can see the whole picture of prophecy and of the end of time. Thank you for truth. Lord, I pray for the sheep, that they'll be strengthened, that they'll be strong in the word and grow. And Lord, I pray that you'll lead us to your elect. Give me strength to continue. Help all those that are sick and have problems with their health that's in this ministry, Lord. And we'll give you praise for everything in Christ's name. Amen. I hope you can begin to see the ending of the nation. But that's the way it ended.
I bring something up to you, Brother Jim.
Yeah.
There was
Sit in his chair, sounded she probably still doing that. He's still in somewhere around. He's been sick. Things like that. Now, even actually down he's been aged. Look at there. Yes, and so many names and things and all that. This back on the bed, he's still
They would take him away.
I'm okay. I told Pastor Jim, I'm in between jobs again, but the Lord is a no, I haven't.
But I still
Please for me, sure.
She's the caregiver for Jim Hawks.